Seat 16A is drifting into dirty air. The words were barely above a whisper, but they cut through the soft cabin hum sharper than the clink of ice in plastic cups or the muted drone of twin engines pushing Flight 427 westbound at 37,000 feet. Most passengers never noticed the escort. Two F-35s rode the edge of the clouds off the starboard side, silver shapes flickering between sunlight and vapor, little more than shadows to ordinary eyes. But Thomas Whittaker noticed. At 82, with a weathered face lined by years and pale blue eyes that still held a pilot's cold precision, he watched the lead fighter hold formation a touch too wide, then slip half a degree where it did not belong. His hand tightened on the armrest. Beside him, untouched tomato juice trembled as the airliner nudged through light chop. Across the aisle, a young businessman looked up from his tablet as Tom leaned toward the passing flight attendant. "Miss," he said quietly, "the wingman's drifting into disturbed wash. Someone needs to tell the cockpit." Emily Parker paused, polite but uncertain, a practiced smile flickering. "Sir, those jets are military escort. I'm sure they know what they're doing." Tom looked out the oval window again, jaw set. "That one's listening to instruments." "Instruments lie." The businessman laughed under his breath. "Buddy thinks he's flying the mission." A few nearby passengers glanced over, curious. Emily offered an apologetic nod and moved on, but something in the old man's voice stayed with her. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Up ahead in the cockpit, Captain Morgan Reed was reviewing routine traffic when Emily mentioned the odd comment from seat 16A. The first officer smirked. "Let me guess. Former pilot?" "He didn't say." Reed keyed a secondary frequency more amused than concerned. "Falcon Escort, be advised seat 16 Alpha thinks your spacing is off." Static cracked, then a young confident voice answered from the F-35. "Captain Ryan Cole." "Copy that. Tell 16 Alpha we appreciate the coaching." Laughter flickered over the military channel. In seat 16A, Tom closed his eyes for a moment as if listening beyond the engine noise, beyond the cabin. There it was again. A faint change in tone, almost too subtle to catch, a harmonic shift buried under turbine roar. He opened his eyes. "It's worsening." Emily had returned now, curiosity overtaking skepticism. "How can you tell?" Tom pointed toward the window without looking away. "Hear that?" Compressor rhythm changed. Cross current at about 28,000 feet. Emily stared. To her, all she heard was engines. To him, it sounded like a warning. Another tremor moved through the fuselage, slight enough most passengers ignored it. But Tom's expression hardened. The businessman across the aisle no longer laughed. Up on the escort channel, Ryan Cole rolled his eyes beneath his visor. "Ghost stories from Coach now." Yet even as he said it, his instruments blinked with a minor turbulence advisory. Small. Inconsequential. But real. In seat 16A, Thomas Whittaker reached slowly into the inside pocket of his worn field jacket and touched an old leather wallet softened by decades. His thumb rested over something hidden inside. His gaze never left the fighter outside. The sun flashed off its canopy like a signal from another lifetime. Then he said, so quietly Emily almost missed it, "If he doesn't break left 3 degrees in the next 30 seconds, somebody's going to remember a call sign they forgot." Captain Ryan Cole did not answer right away. In the cramped cocoon of his F-35 cockpit, his gloved hand hovered over the stick while warning symbology flickered amber for less than a second, then vanished. So small most pilots would ignore it. But the old man in seat 16 Alpha had named the drift before the system had. Ryan frowned beneath his oxygen mask. "Falcon 2 adjusting," he muttered, more to himself than the channel, and nudged 3 degrees left. The jet steadied. The air smoothed. In the airliner cabin, Thomas Whittaker gave the faintest nod, as if hearing an unseen lock click into place. Emily Parker stared at him now with open disbelief. "How did you know?" she whispered. Tom did not answer at once. He drew the old leather wallet from his jacket and opened it with slow deliberate fingers. Inside, tucked behind a faded military identification card, was a worn cloth patch no larger than a silver dollar. Black field. Pale outline of a ghostly aircraft. And stitched beneath it in thread nearly gone gray with age, 2 words. Ghost lead. Emily leaned closer, but Tom folded the wallet shut before she could study it. Across the aisle, the businessman who had laughed earlier said nothing now. He only watched the old man with a discomfort that felt close to respect. Up in the cockpit, Captain Morgan Reed had stopped smiling. He keyed the escort frequency again. "Falcon lead, you corrected exactly as the passenger advised." Ryan Cole answered with forced casualness. "Coincidence." But his voice had lost its edge. His wingman broke in. "Lead, turbulence sensor just logged wake anomaly." Silence followed. A military silence. The kind that meant nobody wanted to admit what they had heard. In seat 16 Alpha, Tom's eyes drifted back to the window, but they seemed to be looking far beyond cloud tops now. Emily lowered her voice. "Were you Air Force?" Tom gave a small dry smile. "Different century." Another soft shudder passed through the aircraft. This time passengers noticed. A child 2 rows back asked his mother if the jets were racing them. Tom listened again, head slightly tilted, almost like a man reading Braille in the sound of engines. Then his expression changed. Not alarm. Recognition. "There is another shift coming," he said. Emily felt a chill she could not explain. "Should I tell the cockpit?" Tom looked at her for the first time directly. "Tell them the escort needs spacing increase." 10 seconds. She hurried forward without questioning him now. In the F-35, Ryan's radar painted a faint turbulence corridor building where none should have been. His pulse quickened. He remembered the old man's phrase. Dirty air. He hated that it suddenly sounded precise. Falcon flight, expand spacing. The second pilot obeyed instantly. Moments later the turbulence rolled through where they had been. Nothing dramatic. No danger now. But enough to make Ryan Cole go still. "Who is that passenger?" his wingman asked over the channel. Ryan did not answer. Back in the cabin, Emily returned almost breathless. "They listened." Tom only nodded. Then he turned the wallet in his hand, thumb tracing the patch beneath the leather. The businessman finally spoke, voice subdued. "Ghost lead. Is that your old call sign?" Tom looked out at the silver fighter pacing the wingtip and said, almost to himself, "Not old. Just quiet." At that exact moment a new voice cracked unexpectedly onto the shared military frequency, older, clipped, unmistakably command. "Identify who referenced ghost lead." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Because he recognized the voice. Admiral James Holloway. The cabin seemed quieter after the Admiral's voice entered the channel, as if even the engines had lowered themselves to listen. Captain Ryan Cole sat rigid in his cockpit, eyes fixed on the instruments yet seeing none of them clearly. Admiral James Holloway was not a man who came onto tactical frequencies for curiosities. "Falcon lead, report immediately," the Admiral said again, each word clipped with old authority. Ryan swallowed. "Sir, civilian passenger referenced call sign ghost lead." A pause followed, heavy enough to feel through radio static. Then the Admiral asked a question no one expected. "Did he use present tense?" Ryan frowned. "Sir." "Did he speak like a man remembering history," Holloway said, "or like a man giving instructions?" Ryan looked toward the airliner pacing through afternoon light and answered more softly than before. "Giving instructions, sir." In seat 16 Alpha, Thomas Whitaker had gone still, his weathered thumb resting on the edge of the old wallet. Emily Parker sensed the air around him had changed. Not in drama. In gravity. She crouched slightly beside him. Who is that admiral? Tom did not turn. A lieutenant once. Her eyes widened. Before she could speak, the cabin intercom chimed and Captain Morgan Reed's voice came over, controlled but strained. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coordinating a routine route adjustment. Please remain seated. The businessman across the aisle whispered, almost embarrassed by his own earlier mockery, "You trained them." Tom gave a faint breath that could have been amusement. "Some of them survived me." Far above the Atlantic, Ryan Cole heard. Another voice joined the military net, older pilots from command routing in, call signs checking the frequency one by one. The channel that had been casual banter 20 minutes ago now carried the hush of a briefing room. Ryan had the strange sensation he was standing in a story older than his commission. His wingman broke silence. "Lead, ask him if he is Whitaker." Ryan keyed up before thinking. "Civilian aircraft, this is Falcon Lead. Request passenger in seat 16 Alpha identify." Captain Reed turned in his cockpit, stunned, then motioned for Emily. She hurried back with the interphone. Tom accepted it without ceremony. His hand, spotted with age, held the receiver as naturally as if no years had passed at all. "Go ahead," he said. Ryan's voice came through, stripped now of every trace of swagger. "Sir, are you Thomas Whitaker?" A few nearby passengers leaned in unconsciously. Tom looked once more at the silver escort beyond the glass. Sunlight flashed along its wing like a blade of memory. "That depends," he answered. "Who is asking?" Ryan hesitated, then gave the response of a junior officer speaking upward. "Captain Ryan Cole, United States Air Force, sir." Tom's pale eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Then yes, Captain. Whitaker here." The effect on the channel was immediate. No cheers. No exclamations. Only a silence so complete it felt ceremonial. Then Admiral Holloway returned, but his voice was no longer command steel. It carried something close to reverence. Ghost-led. "I was hoping the sky had not forgotten you." Emily felt her throat tighten without knowing why. The businessman removed his headphones and sat straight. Even strangers sensed they were hearing something not meant for ordinary days. Tom leaned back, gaze still outward. "Sky remembers," he said. "People are slower." Then he heard it before anyone else. A faint tremor in engine harmonics, smaller than before but wrong in a different way. His expression sharpened. He lifted the receiver again. "Falcon Lead," he said, voice turning suddenly hard as old steel, "check your number 2 fuel transfer. You have a lag beginning." Ryan stared at his panel. One amber advisory had just blinked. Alive. Amber light pulsed once on Captain Ryan Cole's panel, then held steady. Fuel transfer lag. Exactly where the old man had said. For a heartbeat Ryan did not breathe. The cockpit suddenly felt smaller, every instrument brighter, every sound sharper. "Falcon 2 confirms advisory," his wingman said, voice tight now. How did he know? Ryan did not answer because he did not have language for what was happening. He only knew that a man in a commercial seat 600 yards away was reading his aircraft before the systems finished speaking. Admiral Holloway came over the channel at once. "Falcon Lead, take guidance from Ghost Lead." There was no irony in the order. No hesitation. Ryan felt something inside him shift, pride giving way to discipline. Ghost Lead, Falcon Lead copies. Request instruction. In the passenger cabin, several people had abandoned all pretense of minding their own business. They watched Thomas Whitaker with a kind of quiet awe usually reserved for surgeons or storms. Emily Parker held the interphone as if it were a sacred object. Tom's face changed almost imperceptibly. The softness of old age receded, replaced by a concentration that seemed decades younger. "Transfer lag is not the problem," he said. It is the symptom. Your left feed is compensating against false pressure. Ryan scanned the readouts. That is not on my diagnostics. Tom almost smiled. Neither was weather until men learned to smell rain. The businessman across the aisle shook his head in disbelief. A child from 3 rows back had slipped into the aisle, staring wide-eyed at the old man talking to fighter jets as if this were normal. Emily gently guided the boy back, but even she never took her eyes off Tom. Falcon lead, Tom continued, voice low and precise, cycle auxiliary feed manually. 3 count delay before reset. Ryan hesitated half a second. It was not standard sequence. Then he obeyed. 1, 2, 3. Reset. The amber light vanished. His breathing slowed. Issue cleared. The wingman let out an audible exhale over the net. Somewhere deeper on the command frequency, someone whispered, almost involuntarily, "My God." Admiral Holloway said nothing for several seconds. Then, softer than before, same voice. Tom leaned back, but his gaze drifted past the wing, beyond the cloud deck, somewhere only memory reached. Emily asked quietly, "You have done this before?" He answered without drama. "One winter over the North Atlantic. Everything froze but judgment." And with that, the past arrived. Not as explanation, but as a shadow moving behind his eyes. Ryan heard it too, not in words, but in the way the old man's cadence slowed, as though he were hearing another cockpit in another century. There was a night, Tom said into the interphone, almost to himself, when 6 aircraft lost radar in ice fog and the radios filled with fear. The cabin dissolved in his memory into black sky, starlight swallowed by storm, dials dim behind gloved hands, young pilots calling for headings through static. A lieutenant's voice trembling. "James Holloway, not yet an admiral." "Ghost lead, I am blind." Tom's hand tightened faintly on the receiver. "And I told him listen to the wind against the fuselage. It tells the truth before instruments." The flash of memory passed, leaving only the old man by the window again. Ryan Cole sat stunned, realizing he was hearing living history over an operational channel. But before anyone could speak, Tom's head lifted sharply. His eyes narrowed toward the escort. "Captain," he said, tone suddenly urgent though never loud, "your wingman is drifting nose-high by 2 degrees. He does not feel it yet. Tell him correct now." Ryan turned to his display, pulse rising. Falcon 2 had just begun to climb. "Falcon 2, correct 2 degrees nose down now," Ryan Cole snapped, but the younger pilot was already responding, startled by the warning appearing on his own display a fraction after Ghost Lead had spoken. The correction came smooth and immediate. Formation settled. 2 sleek fighters rode level again in the late afternoon sun, silver against a blue so vast it seemed endless. But nothing felt ordinary now. In the airliner cabin, even strangers breathed quieter, as if afraid to interrupt something larger than coincidence. Emily Parker remained beside Thomas Whitaker, no longer acting as flight attendant. More like witness. "You saw that before his systems did too," she whispered. Tom did not answer. His eyes remained on the wingman, pale and reflective, carrying that distant look of a man hearing more than engines. Over the command net Admiral Holloway finally spoke, but the steel in his voice had given way to memory. "He did the same thing in '73. Ryan heard papers shifting somewhere in a distant command post, then the Admiral added, almost to himself, "I was that wingman." Silence rolled over the channel. Young pilots listening from support frequencies stopped transmitting altogether. They were hearing legend breathe. Ryan swallowed. "Sir, with respect, how is he doing this?" Holloway answered with a dry, almost amused exhale. "Because some men learned the sky before computers did." In seat 16 Alpha Tom's thumb rested on the old leather wallet again. The touch triggered something in him, and for a moment the bright cabin windows dissolved into another darkness. Not spoken as story. Remembered as weather. The black Atlantic under moonless cloud. Frost feathering a canopy. 6 jets in loose trail. Instruments failing one by one in electrical ice. Young Lieutenant James Holloway breathing too fast over static. Lead, I cannot see horizon. Tom heard his own younger voice answer across decades. Calm. Gravel low. Forget the panel. Feel the airframe. In the memory his gloved hand rode the stick while invisible current spoke through vibration alone. No panic. Only listening. Ghost lead to all flight, he had said that night, match my turn by instinct. And they had. 6 aircraft following one voice through black weather. The memory faded with the soft hiss of cabin ventilation. Emily saw something in his expression soften with old sorrow. You saved them. Tom gave a faint shake of the head. I taught them not to let fear fly the airplane. Ryan Cole heard every word over the patched frequency, and the arrogance he wore at the beginning of the flight now felt like a coat that belonged to someone else. Ghost lead, he said carefully, permission to ask a question. Tom lifted the interphone. Ask. Ryan hesitated. Why did they call you Ghost? Lead? The old man almost smiled. Because in bad weather I was usually the last thing they could hear and the first thing they trusted. Even the businessman across the aisle lowered his head slightly at that. It sounded less like pride than burden. Then a soft tone chimed in Ryan's cockpit. New advisory. Minor crosswind vector change from upper corridor traffic. Before Ryan could process it, Tom was already speaking. There is your next lie. Ryan blinked. Sir. Your navigation wants a 1-degree right compensation. Do not take it. Why? Tom's eyes narrowed toward the clouds ahead, where a streak of cirrus bent almost invisibly. Because there is sheer hiding beyond that layer. Hold course and let the wind come to you. Ryan stared at the display recommending correction. Every modern instinct said trust the system. Yet without hesitation now, he ignored it. Falcon flight held course. 30 seconds later weather radar painted the shear exactly where Ghost lead had warned. Ryan felt his skin prickle beneath the flight suit. Then Admiral Holloway's voice returned, thick with something not often heard in command. Pride. Falcon lead, he said quietly, do you understand now why some call signs never retire? Ryan Cole did not answer the Admiral immediately because he already knew. He understood now in the way a young officer sometimes recognizes truth all at once and feels smaller for not seeing it sooner. Yes sir, he said quietly, and even over military bandwidth the humility in his voice carried. Falcon flight held steady beside the airliner, but the relationship had changed. The escort no longer watched a civilian aircraft. It guarded something inside it. In seat 16 Alpha Thomas Whitaker rested the interphone in his lap, though no one in the cabin believed the moment had ended. Even passengers who did not fully understand what they had witnessed sensed the atmosphere had shifted into something solemn. Emily Parker remained beside him, almost protective now. Did you always trust instinct over instruments? She asked softly. Tom looked at the clouds sliding by and gave the kind of answer shaped by decades. No. I trusted instruments to tell me what they knew. I trusted experience to tell me what they missed. Across the aisle the businessman nodded slowly as though committing the sentence to memory. Up ahead Captain Morgan Reed had stopped acting like a commercial pilot managing a curious incident. He was listening like a student. He patched Tom directly into cockpit audio. No one objected. No one would have dared. Then Ryan's wingman spoke over the net, younger voice carrying something close to awe. Ghost lead, permission to ask how you sensed the shear before radar painted it. Tom leaned toward the receiver. Cirrus bent against upper flow. Wrong angle for the pressure line. A pause. Then, with almost grandfatherly calm, sky leaves fingerprints, sun. Ryan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, except reverence had replaced humor. Admiral Holloway broke in again. He taught that to us in briefing rooms nobody remembers. Then his tone shifted. Operational. Ghost lead, command reports a weather cell building 80 miles ahead. Recommends civilian flight alter south 10 degrees. Tom's eyes narrowed toward the western horizon. Sunlight had taken on a muted brass tone. He listened. Really listened. The engine note, airflow, subtle resonance in the fuselage. Then he surprised everyone. Negative. Ryan blinked. Sir. South route feeds them into denser crossflow. Stay present heading another 4 minutes, then turn 5 degrees north. Captain Reed checked his own weather display. It contradicted the old man. For a dangerous second the cockpit hung between doctrine and legend. Then Reed made a decision that would have sounded absurd an hour earlier. Holding current heading. Emily stared. They trusted you over radar. Tom answered without pride. They trusted the sky through me. For minutes passed with tension so taut even passengers sensed it. Then Reed banked 5 degrees north exactly as instructed. Minutes later updated weather radar refreshed. The southern route command had advised was now painted amber with turbulent buildup. A low whistle escaped the businessmen. Ryan Cole simply stared at his display in silence. Finally he keyed the channel. Ghost lead, you just rerouted a commercial airliner from Coach. For the first time Tom actually smiled, faint and crooked. Seat 16 Alpha has some authority after all. Even Admiral Holloway laughed softly. It broke the tension, but only for a moment. Because Ryan's threat receiver gave a brief unexpected chirp. Not danger. An unidentified transponder ghosting near the corridor. Ryan's pulse jumped. Unknown contact painting intermittent. Tom's head lifted before anyone finished speaking. The old pilot's face went still in that old impossible way. Emily saw it and knew another turn was coming. Tom raised the receiver once more, voice lower now, almost the tone of a man opening a sealed room. Falcon lead, he said, do not chase the ghost on your screen. It is not traffic. Ryan frowned. Then what is it? Thomas Whitaker looked at the fading light beyond the wing and answered with eerie certainty. It is reflected clutter off the tanker route, and if I am right, you are about to hear a voice on guard frequency none of us expected today. Then the emergency channel crackled alive. The emergency frequency crackled with the dry hiss of distant transmission, then a voice broke through, weathered and steady, carrying the peculiar cadence of old military aviation. Tanker Sierra 2 entering corridor at Angels 38. Ryan Cole froze. His eyes snapped to tactical display. A refueling tanker route was indeed crossing 80 miles ahead, exactly where Thomas Whitaker had predicted reflected clutter would bloom. Falcon 2 let out a stunned breath over the channel. How did he know a tanker was there? No one answered because no one could explain what felt less like prediction and more like memory operating ahead of time. Admiral Holloway's voice returned low and almost amused. Because he probably helped write the corridor. In the passenger cabin a hush deeper than silence had settled. Even the child in the aisle sat still against his mother's arm, sensing something sacred in adult voices gone quiet. Emily Parker looked at Tom as if seeing him anew every minute. Did you know that tanker crew? She asked. Tom kept watching the clouds. Not them. Then after a beat, but I know their habits. Ryan keyed his radio to the tanker. Sierra 2, Falcon lead. Confirm crossing vector. The tanker pilot answered, then paused unexpectedly. Falcon lead, is Ghost lead on your net? Ryan felt a current run through his spine. Affirmative. Static breathed. Then the older tanker pilot said, almost reverently, tell him some of us still use his storm route. In seat 16 Alpha Tom closed his eyes briefly, the faintest crease touching his weathered brow. Not pride. Something closer to old grief softened by time. He lifted the interphone. Sierra 2, this is Ghost Lead. For one heartbeat the entire military net seemed to stop. Then the tanker pilot answered with a voice gone younger through emotion. Sir, this is Major Ben Rourke. My father flew under you in Iceland. Tom's hand tightened on the receiver. Tommy Rourke's boy. Yes, sir. Tom exhaled through a faint smile. Your father could land in fog by smell. Even Ryan laughed softly, unable to help it. But beneath the warmth, something changed in him. The mocking pilot from earlier was gone. In his place sat an officer hearing his profession connected backward through generations. Admiral Holloway broke in again, voice formal now. All stations, maintain open channel. It sounded less like procedure than ceremony. Then Ryan did something no one expected. He switched from tactical brevity to full respect. Ghost Lead, request permission to fly ceremonial reposition. Tom frowned slightly. For what purpose, Captain? Ryan answered, almost shy despite being in a fighter jet. To move Falcon flight from escort posture to honor position. Emily's hand went to her mouth. The businessmen whispered, they are saluting him. Tom looked out the window as the two F-35s peeled subtly outward, then reformed closer off each wingtip in symmetrical station, a position more graceful than practical. Sunlight flashed across both canopies like polished silver. Passengers gasped softly at the sight. Even those unaware of military custom felt the significance. Falcon 2 came over the net, younger voice trembling with restrained awe. Honor position established for Ghost Lead. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Tom said only, you boys fly too pretty. Laughter rippled lightly across frequencies from command to tanker. Yet beneath it all something larger was gathering. Ryan's display now showed descent sequencing toward destination. 40 minutes to landing. He hesitated, then asked, Ghost Lead, may I meet you on the ground? Tom looked at the fading sun and gave no answer at first. Instead he seemed to listen once more beyond engines, beyond radio, as if hearing a final movement in the day's strange music. Then he said quietly, Captain, when we land, bring your whole flight line. Ryan blinked. Sir. Tom's pale eyes reflected the escort outside. Because I think there is someone waiting at that gate who outranks all of us. At that exact moment Admiral Holloway said one sentence that made every pilot on frequency go silent. I have already ordered my car. After Admiral Holloway said he had already ordered his car, no one on the channel treated the flight as ordinary transport anymore. It had become procession. The two F-35s held honor position in perfect symmetry, their silhouettes pacing the airliner like silver sentries against the darkening western sky. In seat 16 Alpha Thomas Whitaker watched them without outward emotion, though Emily Parker sensed something moving beneath his calm, a tide of memories too old for words. Did you know he was coming? She whispered. Tom gave a faint shrug. James never did arrive halfway. Even the businessmen smiled at that. Up in the cockpit Captain Morgan Reed received priority routing from approach, but what startled him was not the expedited descent corridor. It was the note appended from ground command. Military reception requested at civilian gate. Reed read it twice before believing it. Ryan Cole heard it too through shared net and felt his pulse rise with a strange mix of duty and awe. Ghost Lead, he said, voice steadier now but carrying something almost personal, ground command is assembling reception detail. Tom answered dryly, then somebody is overreacting. Falcon 2 could not help himself. Sir, respectfully. I think they are underreacting. Soft laughter rolled through the frequency again. But as descent began, the mood shifted from wonder toward anticipation. Cabin lights dimmed for landing. Through the window city lights glimmered far below like scattered embers. The escort would peel away soon. Ryan dreaded it unexpectedly. He had begun the day amused by an old man in coach. Now he felt reluctant to lose formation. Falcon-led braking escort in 3 minutes, came control. Ryan hesitated, then keyed up one final time before separation. Ghost lead, permission to speak freely. Go ahead, Captain. Ryan took a breath. I ignored you today. The cabin crew still hearing the young pilot confess over open military frequency. I thought you were another old passenger telling stories. He paused. I was wrong. Tom's eyes softened, but his answer came simple and almost fatherly. You were young. Ryan swallowed. No, sir. I was arrogant. Before Tom could respond, Admiral Holloway cut in. Captain Cole, correction accepted by command. Even Tom smiled at that. Then the moment came. The F-35s dipped their wings in a synchronized salute and peeled outward, vanishing toward the dusk with afterburner glow fading like twin stars. Several passengers gasped. Emily blinked away sudden moisture she did not understand. That was for you, she whispered. Tom looked at the empty sky they left behind. No, he said. That was for what they serve. Wheels lowered. Gear hummed beneath the cabin floor. The airliner descended through evening haze and touched runway with a soft chirp. But instead of routine taxi, the aircraft rolled to a remote government stand lit brighter than normal gates. As it slowed, passengers craned toward the windows. At first they saw only flashing service vehicles. Then shapes in dress uniforms. A line of officers. Ground crews standing motionless. And at the center near the jet bridge, a black staff car had just arrived. Ryan Cole's voice returned breathless over handheld relay from the tarmac. Ghost lead, he is here. Tom did not ask who. He already knew. Emily looked through the glass and saw an older man in Admiral stars step out, remove his cap, and stand waiting in the floodlights. The businessmen whispered as if in church, they brought an admiral to meet seat 16 Alpha. But Tom's gaze moved beyond Holloway. His expression changed. For the first time all day, surprise touched it. Because standing slightly behind the admiral was another figure Ryan had not recognized at first. An elderly retired Air Force general in a wheelchair, medals catching light, rising slowly with help to stand. Tom leaned forward, almost disbelieving. Good Lord, he murmured. Emily looked at him. You know him? Thomas Whitaker's voice had gone almost inaudible. I taught him to land in ice. Then the cabin door unlocked. The cabin door opened with a soft mechanical hiss, but no one moved at first. Even passengers who had spent the flight as strangers sat suspended in a silence thick with expectation. Then Captain Morgan Reed stepped from the cockpit, removed his cap, and walked the aisle himself to seat 16 Alpha. No announcements. No ceremony in words. Only a simple gesture as he stopped beside Thomas Whitaker and said quietly, Sir, they are waiting. Tom rose slowly, age visible again in the measured effort of his movements, but something in his bearing made the years seem incidental. Emily Parker steadied his arm though he barely needed it. The businessman across the aisle stood without thinking and stepped back as if making room for history. Then something remarkable happened. One by one, every passenger nearest the aisle stood too. No one had asked them. No one gave instruction. They simply rose. A corridor of silent respect formed from seat 16 Alpha to the cabin door. Tom paused before stepping into it, eyes moving over ordinary people who now looked at him not with curiosity but reverence. He gave the smallest nod and walked forward. At the threshold the floodlights from the tarmac washed over him in silver-white glow. Outside, Admiral James Holloway stood rigid at attention. Beside him the retired general had pushed free of assistance and was standing on trembling legs, chin lifted with old stubborn dignity. Ground crews, officers, even baggage handlers had gone still. Ryan Cole was there too in flight suit, helmet under his arm, younger now somehow without the shield of swagger. Thomas stepped onto the stairs and the night air touched his face. For a moment no one spoke. Then Admiral Holloway stepped forward, but instead of offering a hand he raised a salute. Crisp. Absolute. Every uniformed figure on the ramp followed in the same instant. A wall of salutes under airport lights. Emily, watching from the doorway, felt tears she made no attempt to hide. Tom returned the salute slowly, not grandly, as if answering an old promise. Then the retired general moved toward him. His voice shook with age. You still hear the wind before the instruments. Tom gave a faint smile. And you still land too high on the flare. The old general laughed, and with it decades collapsed. Ryan Cole stepped forward next, face stripped of all pretense. Captain Ryan Cole reporting, sir. Tom studied him for a long second, then reached into his jacket and pulled out the worn leather wallet. From it he removed the faded ghost lead patch and pressed it into Ryan's palm. The young pilot stared, stunned. Sir, I cannot take this. Tom closed Ryan's fingers around it. You do not keep a call sign alive by framing it. You keep it alive by earning why it mattered. Ryan's throat tightened. He could only nod. Somewhere behind them airport traffic moved, lights blinked, ordinary life continued. Yet on that patch of concrete time felt suspended. Admiral Holloway glanced at the passengers still gathered in windows watching. They will be telling this story for years. Tom looked up at the dark sky where the F-35s had vanished. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they just remember an old man in coach who was not as retired as advertised. Laughter moved softly through the gathered officers. Then he turned toward Ryan once more. Captain. Sir. Next time a quiet old man in seat 16 Alpha says the sky is lying, Ryan finished it for him with a faint smile. Listen before the instruments do. Tom nodded. The word seemed to settle over everyone there. No speeches followed. No grand medals appeared. Only handshakes, old names spoken, and the strange peace that comes when dignity is returned without noise. As Emily later watched Thomas Whitaker disappear into the Admiral's waiting car, she remembered the first words he had whispered hours before. Seat 16 Alpha is drifting into dirty air. She smiled, realizing he had not only corrected a fighter. He had corrected everyone who had mistaken silence for insignificance. And as the black car rolled away beneath runway lights, Ryan stood holding the faded patch, looking up at the stars. Some call signs, he understood now, do not fade into history. They wait quietly until the sky remembers.